Hi, Sheila here, and I'm sorry for the horrible video quality. Mercury retrograde has been mistreating me, and my cell phone just hardly works. So I can't record on my cell phone, and that ruins the image. But that, let's at least do the beauty of the science. This video is about Yin and Yang science, and I have a lot of things that I want to say. I don't know how, in what order they will come out. But I'll begin with the numbers, and I guess I'll touch on numbers, perhaps some astrology, and scientific endeavor or philosophy of science. I'll try to reach all of that somehow. So, numbers. I do it a bit differently than what I saw in Chinese tradition, because in Chinese tradition they associate the numbers, 1, 3, I think 5, 11, 7 with motion and change, and then they say this is Yang, and 1, 2, 4, whatever, they associate it with balance and perhaps stillness, and then they say that is Yin. So that it makes a lot of sense, but I think of it mathematically and geometrically, so I kind of do it the other way around. So bear with me. I will not touch 1, because 1 is like stillness, and I will address that later. It's more complex. I see the 2, 4, 6, 8, and so on. I guess you could call them even numbers as Yang numbers. And why? Because they are linear. So if I have 1 point and I go from 1 point to the second point, I go in a linear trajectory. But if I go through 3 points, if I try to move a line through 3 points, I already move in cyclic motion. And cyclicity, cyclic energy, is Yin. Linear movement, Yang. Cyclic movement, Yin. This is why for me the numbers come out the opposite. So even numbers would be Yang, and odd numbers would be Yin, or at least not odd numbers, the numbers that are a multiplicity of 3s. And here we run into something interesting, because if we go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 4, 6. 6 is 3 times 2. And if 2 is Yang, would be multiplied by 3, we actually get Yin. So it's like extreme Yang becomes Yin. And it is also 2 3s. So, and 9 is extreme Yin. 3, 3, 3. Yeah, 3 times 3, 9 becomes Yang. So it preserves the Yin quality, but it kind of becomes Yang. It's like it changes phase. We know that extreme Yang becomes Yin, extreme Yin becomes Yang. And when I look at astrological aspects, if we look at the sextile and the trine, yeah, the 30 and the 60, the 30, the 60, the 120, they are Yin. But the energy is Yin. There is no conflict. There is no it's smooth. There is no action potential. So that is very Yin. But the 90 and the 180 is Yang. The 90 is 3 times 30. So extreme Yin becomes Yang. And this is an action potential. It's a Mars angle. And the 180 in astrology, what we call opposition. Yeah, 90 is a square, opposition. Then the opposition is 3 times 60. So 3 times 60 becomes yang. Remember, 60, yeah, 3 times 20 is yang becoming yin. 3 times 60, yin becoming yang. So 180, again, a conflictual position. And 180 is also twice 90. So we have extreme yin and extreme yin. Okay, these two become yang. Yeah, the 2-2, for example, 2 yangs, they still make 4 is yang. So the 2-2 don't matter so much, they still become a yang. Yeah, 2 3s still nothing changes. But 2 2s, yin, yang becomes yin, 2 3s, yin becomes yang. Okay. In music, it's a bit, I haven't tried to play it in music, but I would suggest that if you have a keyboard, then use the black keys, because they are in count of 5. They are in 5 and not in 7. And then you can try to do, you know, you can try and see how it works for you. Because, you know, you have 5 and then 10, it reminds us more of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, rather than the 1 to 7 that can be more problematic to see it. But I haven't tried it yet. I don't have an organ or a piano next to me, so it's difficult for me to say that. And then let's think of the 150, the inconjunct aspect in astrology. 150 can be expressed by 90 plus 60. So 90 is extreme yin that becomes yang, and 60 is extreme yang that becomes yin, right? 20, 20, 20, 60, yeah. Yang, 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 yin, 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 yang. And then we have extreme yin and extreme yang coming together. So when we have yin and yang coming together, let's say 5. Yeah, 5 is actually harmonized. 1 yang, 1 yin. It doesn't seem balanced, right? It's 5, but it is harmonized. So 5 is harmonized. But when we have 6 and 9, we have explosive quality, very unbalanced. So we have, and this is around stillness, because there is yin stillness that is yin and yang balanced. But when we take yin to the extreme, that is yin to the extreme that becomes yang, this shifting moment, and we take another yang to the extreme that becomes yin, we put them together, we have an explosion. It's constantly exploding. It's not stable. It's not harmonizing. And the inconjunct is just like that. It's something that's not, it's not the collision like the 180. It's the something, there's something explode. I think of it as a Uranian aspect. Okay, I have it in my chart, Uranus in conjunct Moon, so of course it looks Uranian to me, but I think of it as Uranian because it's kind of, you can't quite blend the elements. There's something there that you can't quite blend. So let me know if it resonates with you. If you're an astrologer, then you need a bit of knowledge in astrology to understand how these aspects play out. But that's the numbers, and I wanted to talk about temperature and density in terms of yin and yang. I want to talk about stillness. So we said that just, you know, mellow yin, mellow yang, just yin and yang together, they're balanced. But if you take yang to the extreme, that it nearly becomes yin, just becomes yin, and we take yin to the extreme, it just becomes yang, and we put them together, we have explosion. So both, there is a yin balance, there is yin plus yang, it's yin balance, and then we get stillness. And stillness is both yin and yang. I will get, in a second, I will get to that. But when we have extreme yin, extreme yang, it is also balanced, but it's explosive. Okay, when you put extreme yin, extreme yang together, you get an explosion. And both are balanced. Both are the moment where you reach balance. So you can reach balance and you have stillness, or you can reach balance and you have actually explosion. And explosion creates, there is peace after the explosion, but also explosion is dispersing energy. So it's like explosions are life. We need explosions because they release energy. We need energy all the time. So tiny explosions happen all the time, so tiny deaths. And so stillness. When we think about stillness, think about temperature. When is something still? When its particles are not moving very fast. They're moving. Our particles are always moving, even within solid. We don't have complete stillness because we don't have complete zero. We don't have a complete void. There is always motion. There is always substance. There's always something. So the particles are always moving. But when they hardly move, when they move very slow, the temperature is cooler, right? Because what is temperature? Temperature is velocity. High velocity, high temperature. Of course, because of friction, right? There is friction. When we move something around the air and there is friction, then high friction creates heat. But high velocity creates high friction, dependent, of course, on the air pressure, and so it's always relative. But high velocity, high temperature, and there is more linear movement. There's more movement. So more movement, higher speed, higher temperature. And so when things begin to move, when they're a bit heated up, they begin to change their state of solidity. They begin to become more liquid. But liquid is yin. So what's going on? Right? If solid is yang because it's more dense, but there is hardly any movement, so it's cooler, so it's more yin. And liquid is yin, but there is more movement, so it's more yang. That's the yang inside of yin and yin inside of yang. So in stillness, the cooler temperature and the slow movement is yin. So the rather stillness aspect of stillness, the slower movement is yin. The temperature is cooler, that's yin. But the density of a solid is yang. We just have to understand that whenever we talk about yin and yang, we cannot isolate them completely. Whenever we try to isolate them, we reach unity. Wherever we try to unify them, we reach isolation. Okay. What else do I want to know? So in geometry, yeah, linear lines, rectangles are yang. Cyclic or triangles are yin. Again, within a triangle, it's a bit difficult to explain. I will try. Do you see that? So if I count just a trajectory, 1, 2, 3, cyclical, yin. Yeah, also a trine in astrology would normally be very yin energy. It will not be action potential. But if I go 1, I just count the point 1, then I count the second point 2, third point 3. To go back to 1 to complete the circle, I need another movement. That's 4. That's already yang. No longer yin. So this is yin inside of yang, yang inside of yin. It's a bit tricky to understand that. When you think about Western music and the Western counting system, You think about 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, right? Western music, beats of 4. It's very young. It's very linear. It's very compartmentalizing. And the science is similar. When you think, yeah, that's the yang science. When you think about the cyclic numbers, think about Nikola Tesla, yeah, 3, 6, 9, and so on. 3, 6, 9. Cyclic nature. You think about something that's more intuitive, that is more yin. Calculating the orbits of the planets. I'm not sure if it began in Mesopotamia or in Babylon. The Hellenistic tradition copied that. There was the math was based on 60, a count to 60. And remember, what is 60? According to Western, this is yang that turns yin. But in cyclicity, that's just yin. Okay? And so you had 30, 60, I think 90, 180, 360, and so on and so forth. So it's very cyclic, counting the cycles, going through the cycles. It's not the cycle that is linear. And those traditions, the way for them to do, for example, mathematics, it was less axiomatic. It was more intuitive, in the sense that they would discover something, and then they would discover something else, and then maybe they would manage to connect them, and they didn't have to express, they didn't have to always express everything in terms of an axiom. For example, in axiomatic science, you have to reduce your expression to the axiom. You have axiom, and only if you manage to have an elaborated sentence that is elegant, and you can return to the axiom, then you know that you have made a right argument, a valid argument. You always have to prove it in terms of the axioms. In Babylonian math, and I think also Mesopotamian math, but I don't know enough, you don't have to work like that. You can still express things in terms of other things, but you don't have like an axiom that you have to build upon for the argument to be valid. It's more intuitive, and this is more relaxed standards for empiricism. When you go to the yin-yang science, yang science has to be axiomatic. In yang science, you have to have a rigorous method. This is also beautiful. There is unity, there is a rigorous method, there is one truth that you need to express in a very elegant and orderly way. I think a bit of Saturnian a bit, to get to a clear answer. That's the mathematics. Of course, mathematics has evolved. We have induction and deduction and so on and so forth. I'm being simplistic here. But with yin science, your method does not have to be so orderly. And so you are allowed to make arguments that are valid without proving their validity against one truth. So you can have more diversity. And this is also, I'm sorry I cannot give more concrete examples. I am myself looking into that. I'm looking for more concrete examples to understand more the differences, like how exactly the Babylonian people did math. If you have more knowledge about it, then I would love to know that. But the big difference is that one is more chaotic, intuitive, allows for more play, more dynamism in its expression, and one is more orderly. It's more yang. So there is the yin science and the yang science. Now, when science had developed onwards, you know, we had cosmology, and cosmology was very much intertwined with astrology, and astrology was very much intertwined with divination or spiritualism or magic, magical traditions, whether Hermetic traditions or Babylonian traditions or Vedic traditions, Hellenistic traditions. It was always endowed with magic, because there was predictions about the world that were not about geocentric. They were not in relative to the Earth so much. They were trying to make general statements. In astrology, you would consider heliocentric computation. That is, I think it is in relation to the sun, but I'm not sure. As opposed to geocentric computation, that is computing, calculating things in relation to the Earth. So, so this attempt, these attempts with science, we also had cultures that were more multi, like polytheism, you know, having worshipped a couple of gods, entities, mythology, Greek mythology, versus what we would later have as unity, as God, that is more, you know, monotheistic, and that is also translated into science, a science of diversities versus a science that is that has to be unified to be valid. And if we get more into yin science, yang science, there is, in terms of energy, we can think of the third chakra as the place where we have perception over the world. And the yin is more absorbing things and immersing in things and feeling into things, and then making the judgment, taking the time, and seeing how does an energy feel like. Does it create flow inside my body? Is it heart opening? Is it spiritual warmth? Is it cooling down of the system? What do I channel? Is it good for me? And then if it is good, then you can express it, and then you can say, this is true. This is how you do channeling. This is true. When you channel, you pay attention. Does it invoke fear? Does it invoke contraction? Does it invoke expansion? And if you have flow, expansion, kindness, love feelings, not attachment feelings, love feelings, then you can say, okay, this is valid knowledge, and I can give it to the world. I can share it. And so a lot of the mathematics was channeled. A lot of the science was channeled. So you would have channeling, and then you could, you know, you could do experiments. You could check them in the real world. And why not? You need to practice. But there was a lot of connection to spirit. And so looking at the planets, looking at the stars, it was like looking at the gods, looking at the myth, and acting with nature, acting with the cosmos, and making rituals based on the predictions, the timings, the energy of the planets, and the way they are interrelated. Yang science began to have a different sort of rhythm that is, you know, more linear, less cyclic, and more compartmentalized, more dense, and perhaps even faster. You know, the growth of science, of linear science, the feeling of progress, the feeling of this trajectory that we're going straight ahead, is good. It gives us a lot of happiness, a lot of joy, a lot of sense of knowing, because we focus on what we can rigorously tell. So when we do something intuitively, we have to think, is it an analogy? Yeah, am I getting visuals that is an analogy? What is the interpretation of the data? When you're doing something very rigorous and you have to prove it, that this elegance, and you just shift from distractions and you focus, then you can move in your way, you move faster. I admit that. So there is a pro to Yang science. And Yang became also very materialist. It shifted. It didn't focus on religion or spirituality. It focused on substance and observation instead of looking up, looking down. The best is to look up and to look down. Yeah, this holistic science, it looks up, it looks down. But Yang science, it looks at, it observes with the senses that it has, and computates and interprets based on that. It tries to be elegant. It tries to be economic, yeah, simple. And it notices patterns. Now, every science notices patterns. But with Yang science, I think of Newton. And Newton was excellent in creating thermodynamics. Very simple patterns that one could use practically to build stuff, engineering. And he was thought to have had Asperger's. And the thing with Asperger, I had a teacher who had Asperger. They are very linear. They are very orderly. Like for my teacher, we had a class every Tuesday. She wore the same clothes every Tuesday. She had different clothes for each day, and she wore the same clothes. It had to be the same clothes. The pattern had to be, there had to be something very constant around it. And the great thing that she taught me was, we talked about neurolinguistics. So she talked about, there is the question of locality versus, I don't remember, yeah, locality, question of the mind brain. Are things local or not? So her position was that when we have a phenomena, there is certain neural activity, and the parts that are active, they are involved in the phenomena. They do not rule the phenomena. The way I read charts is this way. There is no rulership. There's parts that are involved in the phenomena. For example, if we talk about fertility, involved in it, all the chart is involved to some extent. But we will see main activity in first and fifth house and the rulers, main activity in Scorpio and its ruler, main activity in Jupiter, main activity perhaps Moon or Cancer. So these are things that could be more active in relation to fertility as a phenomenon. So something that transits, something that activates by profection, by transit, by progression, could indicate activation of this issue for the native. And so back to Newton, he did something beautiful to science, but what he did was something that was leading us to scientific materialism. It's trying to explain everything in terms of matter, completely disregarding spirit. We needed that. We needed this phase because it enriched our analogies. Without observing nature and finding language to the things that we see in the real world and thinking of things and finding new words for them, we would be left with the cosmology that there is a turtle holding an elephant held by an ant. And that is how the world or the cosmos is constructed. People used to describe the cosmos in these terms. But when we observe more things and we give name to things, then we can have richness of language that we use as to cosmology. Of course, the Big Bang is might not be the best, most intricate example of it. But it's still, you know, it reaches the point of unity through through computation, through mathematics, through physics, through philosophy, through particles, through history, through trajectories, to sense of time. There are so many concepts that we don't have in a turtle holding an elephant, holding, I don't know, a monkey, and that is how the cosmos is kept. So we needed that. We needed what I call Yang science. I call this Asperger science, and I hope that after my explanation you understand that this is not dissing Asperger people or calibrating on something. It's just describing in the best of words what is Yang science. But we cannot, what Asperger people are not so good at is when they need to be more yin, when they need to play within chaos. They are excellent in finding order in chaos, but they cannot contain chaos. It is their inability to contain chaos that leads them to such genius, to be such genius in finding patterns, because they're anchored. They need it for their sense of security. So they find it, and they find order in what seems to be so chaotic. And this is their genius. They're able to ground chaos. This is why they can make such great scientists. But we cannot be left with only just as Asperger persons find it more difficult to have relationships, to have experience, to get along in society is a big world, because society is smarter now. But to get along with people, to get along with things that are more chaotic, that are more intuitive, that's more difficult for the Asperger person. Science cannot be stuck within this phase. I do belly dancing, and when we do belly dancing, we want to make a complex movement. We compartmentalize, we go Yang on it, and then let's say we want to move just the upper body. We move just the upper body, and then we move just the lower body. We master the movement, just the upper movement, just the lower movement. And then we want to move them together. We work on the integration. And when we work on the integration, it feels like we forgot both movements. But we work until we are able to do both things, both the upper body and the lower body, and have a complex movement. With science is the same. To have a more rich and integrated view of science, holistic science that is both intuitive and cognitive, we needed that separation. But we also can't get stuck there. We have to integrate. And that is a part of the scientific endeavor. I'm going to return for a while to one of the first channelings that I got. I worked with the purple kunzite. And what I got was that the scientific endeavor is kind of rebuilding the Tower of Babel. And there was a Tower of Babel when everybody spoke one language, everybody understood everybody. And then it was destroyed, and we got diversity. But it was not destroyed so that we would fight each other. It was destroyed so that we can rebuild it, but now with the richness of life, and the different paradigms and different cultures and different languages and different sense of faiths and beliefs. And so the way to do that, the way to do the scientific endeavor, is to understand that there is a canon, there is a unity here, one truth, there's a canon. And the different paradigms, the different sets for empiricism, different perceptions of what is scientific, they are like variations of the canon. And so when we come here, when we go from here, one truth, to here, each one of us has their own variation on the canon. For example, with medicine, the philosophy that is healthy for you, you will see it by your mental state, by your physical state, what creates flow in your body. Does your body feel contraction when you believe something? When I do aromatherapy and we work with essential oil blends to smell them, to use them on chakra points, We work with mantras, and the mantras are meant to expose us. We try to find the mantra that will create flow inside the body and the bodies of the patient. And we do that with energy. That, you know, this is a whole discussion to talk about the blends themselves, but the concept, the essence is that for every person there is a set of beliefs that is compatible and creates well-being within them. This is like the song that you are meant to sing, and that song can vary. It can be different beliefs for different stages of life. And so you would need to transform and change and grow your beliefs to do what you have to do in the world right now. Therefore, for example, for scientists that that can be very dogmatic, that want to explain the world in terms of matter, that don't care what is the meaning of all of this, because they derive much joy from focusing on these explanations and compartmentalization and rigorous scientific methods. They are passionate, their body is healthy, there is flow inside them. This is their song, this is their paradigm. They are not meant to do other stuff. This is what they are comprised of. In astrology, you can really see how different complexions of the ninth and the ruler, Mercury and the houses it rules, Mercury in the house it is placed in, Aries that is the mind and therefore Mars ruling it. All of these things can vary and create different complexion. I think the video I did for Richard Feynman, he had 9th house in Taurus and Mercury there. So it was different sort of mind processing that he needed. He was very passionate when he was doing science, and he did not do spirituality and cosmology at all. He didn't need that to be happy. He didn't need that to give value to the world. That's very different. When you think about, let's say if there was a water sign there, perhaps there could be more channeling. I think Einstein had the 9th house in Pisces, if I'm not mistaken, and he was more spiritual. He was he spoke about God. And I'm not going to do Einstein now because it's been done. I don't feel like I need to add value there. You can YouTube Einstein's astrology chart and you'll probably see that. But you see a person that is more, that is closer to non-duality. Also the, what he conceptualized, it was elegant, it was beautiful. I think he had the Venus conjunct Saturn structural thinking. I think it was in Aries, structural thinking, and you have Mercury there too, together with elegance and beauty Venus. So if you look at them at the equations of Einstein, they're so simple, but they are so beautiful. They're so elegant. They're Venusian. And that is what I remember from his chart. So for every person, there are paradigms that would fit their health more. And being aware of that can give you the road to what signs you allow. And for some people, other paradigms would create contractions in their body because they're not meant to do that. And it is okay to keep the separation. And it is okay to find the people who can integrate and can discuss things together. We don't want to push our paradigms onto others. And we don't want to back down from expressing our voice and shining in the world because it has a place. Every voice has a place. And so if I look at it not from an ego relational, but cosmos relational, relating to the cosmos, every voice has its reason. And how should I say it? A whole is made from us each expressing that, because it harmonizes, even if it doesn't seem like it harmonizes. The science does integrate. There is a shift in consciousness. There is ability to look at cosmology from the vantage point of astrology again, but now with richness of language, not just myths, but also electricity, also physics. You know, if I look at the planets, you think of yin and yang. You say Mars is yang. Why is Mars yang? And Mars is considered malefic in traditional astrology. Mars is moving fast, and it is hot and sharp and pointed, very yang, right? The phallus, sharp things. Blood flow, hot, with what blood heats the body. While I think the lymph and water cools the body. Water, blood heats the body. And that's why excess heat, inflammation, so on and so forth. So Mars is hot and dry, and it's moving fast. It has a trajectory. Mars also rules Aries, that is moving fast, and it also rules Scorpio, that I think I would describe as the blood flow to the reproductive system. And so Mars detracts from, when something is fast and dry, hot and dry, it detracts humidity from the air. It detracts water. Water are essential for us to live. But it detracts water into it, but it does not absorb water and keeps it within. It is drying up water. And so it is malefic. We need that, okay? In good quantities, we need that. This is the fire of digestion. It is fire, we need that fire. We need movement. We need that. The world is not, there's a place for that. But only that, you know, what it does essentially when we isolate it, it is malefic. It detracts water and dries up water. So when something is too watery, too humid, we need a bit of Mars to make it a bit more yang, and then we can have motion and not stagnation. So that's why Mars is malefic. With Saturn, we have a different story. And before moving to Saturn, when you talk about humidity levels, something can be hot and humid. But in relation, okay, relatively, something hot can contain less liquid than something colder. Think of ice. Ice expands upon cooling, so it contains more water. But when you heat it up, water evaporates, so it contains less water. So liquid will contain the less water than the solid. Although solid is yang and liquid is yin. We spoke about that previously, right? So that's intricate. We have yang inside of yin and yin inside of yang. I also spoke about it, about sexuality, when I talked about working correctly with Mars. I said Mars is tantric. It is, Mars tantric is, embodies stillness, and then it is vacuum. So it is being Mars while being vacuumed. It's being pulled in to initiate, and then it's well received. So that we have the yin inside of yang, yang inside of yin, but this is not Mars isolated. This is also Mars, already Mars harmonized with Venus, with Jupiter, and so on and so forth. Why is Saturn malefic? So Saturn, some see it as yang, some see it as yin. Why? Because we have yin inside of yang, yang inside of yin. Saturn is something cold and solid structure. So if you think, you know, Mars is dense, but it moves fast, it has a trajectory. Saturn is still. More still, it moves slower. So think about a stable structure. It's Saturnian. Now, with structure, when I talk about something stable structure, so the solidity of it is yang. But what did we say about solids and stillness? For something to be solid, it has to be relatively cooler, and cool is yin. The atoms have to move slower and less movement. While movement is yin, slower movement is more yin than fast movement. When something moving fast, linear, yang. Something moving slow, it kind of, when you want to go slow, how do you go? You don't go straight ahead. You go like this, you make circles, you go around. This is slowing down. We diffuse energy, we spread it around. This is yin. We want to yinify something dense, we spread the energy around. Also, how do we do it? With breath. Breath is cyclical. So we take that in breath and we spread the air around our bodies. And so dense things become cooler energy. And then energy spreads around as we yinify our body, and then we draw the air out and draw the air in. So there is a trajectory that is yang, but the cyclicity, the spreading of energy is very yin. There's a lot of cohesiveness in breath. It's the lungs, it's Jupiter, but we'll get to it. So Saturn, the structure, solidity of it is yang. But the structure, Saturn is extreme coolness, extreme cold, so it's solid, it's icy. Extreme, think of something extremely cold. When something is cold, no problem. When something is extremely cold, it draws heat. We put an ice cube outside, not a hot day. An ice cube outside, a beautiful day, it will melt slowly, but it will melt. How does it melt? It draws the heat, and then the coolness spread. That's the difference in pressure. What is pressure? It's density. Again, temperature, fast and slow, pressure, density. Yeah. And then it basically something very cold draws the temperature. It lowers a stable temperature. So if the temperature is too hot, we put an ice cube there, it draws out the heat. It is okay. But if the temperature is normal, we put a lot of ice in there, it becomes too cool. And then it is malefic because it is too cool. Too much stagnation, too much slow movement, too much, not enough heat to nurture the body. All is in relation. We see astrology as relative to our planet and to our temperature. And when I might get to mundane astrology and personal astrology, because in mundane astrology things operate differently, and we see that from a different perspective because our temperatures are not compatible with what is enough for Earth. But I will talk about that for earthquakes. So Saturn is malefic, and some people see Saturn because of its solidity of structure as yang and the great malefic, and some people see it as yin because of its extreme coolness, which is extreme yin. Remember that extreme yang becomes yin, extreme yin becomes yang. Okay, so you can get confused there. This is also why people see Scorpio as yang sign because you think of Mars, but Scorpio is actually yin. Although it's fixed water, so it has a trajectory and a linear trajectory like a river. So this is a bit yang. It's more yang than, let's say, a lake or even an ocean. Yeah, Pisces is more yin than Scorpio, no doubt about it. But then when we talk about depth, yeah, still. So let's take Jupiter for the moon first. The moon is not icy. It's cool and moist. It's cool and has humidity. Think of the womb fluids. I associate the womb fluids not squirting, womb fluids. Womb fluids is, for example, when a person with the womb ovulates. Then during ovulation, the temperature cools down. The temperature of the body cools down to fit the process of ovulation. needs cooler temperature, and there are fluids coming out of the womb that are very transparent. They're they're liquid, and they are very cool. These fluids, when you see these fluids and you want to get pregnant, this is the time to have sex. When you see these fluids and you don't want to get pregnant, this is the time to wear a condom. So, and this is based on scientific approaches. I think it's called awareness to fertility. I don't know how it's called in English, but that is something that people who want to become pregnant use to track the bodily signs, the temperature, the womb fluids, the height of the cervix, according to the cycle, and know when ovulation happens. Some people use it to keep away, to avoid pregnancy. I think you want to add a condom if you want to do that. But the womb fluids, they're moon, they're cool, and they're humid, they're moist. And this is actually benefic. They don't detract anything. They're not so cool that they detract heat. They're not icy. And they're cool enough so they can hold water. They can hold life. They literally can hold life. The reason this is the temperature, so that when sperm comes in, it's a bit hotter. And we talk about sperm, this is Jupiter. The womb fluid nourish the sperm and protect it from the temperature of the body so that there can be fertilization. Okay, this is benefic, this is life, and this is it's yin, it's healthy yin, it's not extreme yin, it's healthy yin. So moon, when well aspected, when in a good sign, is something that can be a sweet spot for a chart, very good for fertility, for the womb, and so on. And then we talk about the great benefic, Jupiter. And Jupiter, we think of Jupiter as hot and moist. It's not hot and moist. It's lukewarm and moist. It's hot, but it's not like extreme heat. It's not Mars. It's not hot and dry. For something to hold liquid within, it has to be less warm than the hot and dry. Liquid cools. The liquid cools. Okay, well, I don't want to get into atoms here. This is too much. But just see that something cooler can hold more liquid. So Mars is still hot because it has trajectory. Think about sperm. Sperm goes through Mars, goes through the penis, through the vessel, enters the womb. So it has to have trajectory that you have to have energy to make it move. So it has to be warmer. It cannot be cooler. It cannot be still like the moon. But the womb, the womb fluids or something like that. But if Jupiter was hot and moist, no babies would come to the world because it would be too hot. It would kill sperm. So it is warm. It's not hot. It's not burning. It's warm and humid and moist. And so it meets the womb fluid, and there can be fertilization. So Jupiter is cool enough to contain fluid and warm enough to bring life, to bring motion. This is why it is cohesive. It is very good balance of yin and yang, of something that is cool and moist and something that's hotter and therefore a bit drier. So when we bring something that is at the right temperature, it's warm enough, it's cool enough, it's liquid enough, it's holds enough liquids, then what it does, it spreads life. It doesn't detract. Jupiter doesn't detract, and therefore we call it the great benefic. Okay. So this is something we could not get with astronomy alone. And also this is something that we could not get with gynecology alone. This is why gynecology is one of the fields in medicine that suffer the most from lack of integration with holistic science. There are many fields, for example, when you talk about the health of the heart, They are wonderful. You can save life with heart surgeons. You can save life with installing the heart, the device that fixes heart palpitation. Don't remember what's it called in English. You can save life when it comes to the heart. Conventional medicine can save life. Of course, you know, changing what you eat, how stressed you are. There are many holistic things that go to this. But when you have a heart condition, you don't go to, you know, when you are right now in a heart condition, let's say failure of the heart or heart attack or stroke, you don't go to, you know, to Chinese medicine. You don't go to me, to an aromatherapist. You don't go to an astrologer. You go to hospital immediately. You need to be saved right now. And they put electricity through you, and the electric shock kind of they trigger the whole system with electricity, and it balances the rhythm and the pulsation, and then your life is saved with a couple of more procedures. And they can use the knife. They can make very surgical operations on you, and you can be saved using conventional medicine. But when it comes to gynecology, there are many procedures that A, should not even be done at first place, B, misleading, and detract from life, because this is holistic. It's more holistic science. It's conventional medicine can do mistakes that that can cost a lot to the patient. So this is where you would need to go to a practitioner that is holistic, because you cannot get that with Yang science. Womb is Yin. It's cooler. It is a vessel. It's hollow. Something hollow is Yin. It is not Yang. And to understand it in Yang, the heart is Yang. It's not, oh, there's always Yin inside of you. The heart is very Yang. It has pulsation, red, okay, red blood, the color. It is, yeah, the pump of the body, it's Yang. And the Yang science is very compatible with the heart. Also Yin, yeah, of course, you nourish Yin, you nourish Yang with Yin. But Yang science is very compatible with the heart. For the womb, not so. You still need to go to gynecologists, you still need to get tested, you still need to know what's on with your body. But it's not something you can, it is not so good to treat it only with Yang science. For example, with fertility, I've heard funny stories. Reading a book about being aware to fertility, about people trying to have babies for a year, and then they go to the doctor, and the doctor begins treatment because they have been trying for a year or two, and they did not succeed. Then they come to the practitioner that actually learned how to be aware of the menstrual cycle and the fluids and the temperature, and they say, well, you know, when have you been trying to have babies? And they would only try to have babies in days where there were no womb fluids, because maybe one of the partners felt, oh, it's not comfortable, the womb fluids coming out of my womb, oh, I'm sensitive about it. And they found out that they were just missing the days of ovulation for one whole year, and that was the case. Like, they could get pregnant, but with conventional medicine, not checking for that would, you know, give a lot of treatments that are no longer needed, that can even hurt the chances to actually have a child. Well, if you work together and you see, for example, from ovulation to menstruation, if there is not enough time from ovulation to menstruation, when you try to get pregnant, then it's hard to keep the baby. Now, if you follow through that, and you know that you can go to the doctor and you can say, oh, I have very little time from ovulation to menstruation, not enough time to hold a baby, and so the doctor, the conventional doctor, can interfere with your hormones so that you can keep a baby. This is good work between Yin and Yang science, bringing life. but you wouldn't know that if you would not practice yin science. The essence is the yin. This is the 5th vital sign of people who have wombs, who go through menstruation cycle. What more did I want to say? Yin science, yang science, astrology. Did we go through everything? I know I'm going to shut this video down, and then I'm like, oh, I should have said that. I should have said that. Yes, the planets, life, fertility. Yeah, I think I wanted to say something more, but I don't remember. This was probably a lengthy video. Sorry for the horrible video quality. I hope you find it thrilling still to watch. There's a lot of condensed data in it. It's been a while since I wanted to do a yin science, yang science video. Gender. Okay, let's talk about gender. There are feminist approaches to science. There are interesting approaches. Like, for example, women who said, oh, we describe science in terms of phallic or yang trajectory stuff, and then we only think of the sperm as the fertilizer, while it's actually the egg that kind of vacuums the chosen sperm. And this is beautiful to see that. And yeah, they have more ideas of how we think about science as yang and not integrate yin. This is beautiful. I think in terms of standards for empiricism, we've talked about, you know, the Babylonian versus the axiomatic science, and intuitive science versus Asperger's science. I said it with, you know, like I said it from love, not something to diss, because it's a part of what we need. Explain that. But then when we are afraid of yin, when we are afraid of the mystery, when we are afraid of that which is feminine, we cannot make good observations, we cannot integrate, we cannot absorb. Great scientists are not afraid of the mystery, they thrive in it. Even yang scientists, you know, one of the things Richard Feynman said, I'm not afraid of not knowing things. I rather have a question that is not answered than an answer that cannot be questioned. Said, no, I'm thrilled by not knowing things. This is where I thrive. Okay, so even though he was not spiritual or was not connected to, you know, whatever gods or spiritual practices, he was very healthy. He was thriving in the yin environment, in the environment of the mystery. So science was very balanced. And oh, I see. Okay, I need to finish. Then I will, and I'll, you know, share, like, subscribe, and we'll see each other. Ciao.